Welcome back to the Fourth Way Podcast. In this episode, I'm going to continue my case against libertarian notions of the will. And I wanted to remind you, since we're like 3 or 4 episodes in here, that I'm not doing this to just undercut our notions of the will. I think it's really important for a lot of reasons, but particularly because we are in a season that is going to shift focus to the problem of evil. And if you go back to the beginning of this season, I kind of set up the case for why I think the will is extremely important to understand before we ever get to discussing evil, since the human will is something that so oftentimes creates some of the worst evils in history, and also since it's the human will that we need to discuss in relation to like how do we change, how do we fight evil, how do we transform hearts, and those sorts of things. Too, how do we view people who do evil, and how do we look at God, who we say also has a will, and how does that factor into culpability, moral responsibility in a world that is evil? So this is really important. But right now I'm undercutting notions of libertarian free will, trying to make a case against it before I set up a positive idea of what the will is, so that then, after all of that, we can talk about the problem of evil. Okay, so last week I used Hollywood to provide us with a base, a story to work with. This philosophy, this idea that came out in the movie The Adjustment Bureau about free will. This week, I want to turn away from Hollywood and I want to look at the music industry and give you an example of a song that portrays a philosophy that is promoting the will. So today I want to look at a song by the famous band Rush, and their song is entitled Free Will, right? So of course they're talking about the will and what they think the will is, what they're putting forward. When we looked at the Adjustment Bureau, I showed how yes, Hollywood thought that they were putting forward this great case of free will, but we uncovered that, well, no, that's not really free will at all. It was essentially these people, because of the natures that God created, they were determined to fall in love with each other. So it actually ended up proving the opposite of what it tried to show. So today in Rush's song, we're going to see some very similar things where the song kind of falls apart, right? The singer is kind of demeaning, I guess, maybe not the best word, but like condescending towards people who don't believe in free will. And then when the artist sets up or kind of tips his hand on some of his philosophy, you're like, oh, that's not really good. And so we're gonna unpack that song right now. So I'm not extremely familiar with Rush as a band. I've only listened to a couple of their songs. But it seems true that a good amount of their songs deal with ideas of individuality and fighting against conformity. And honestly, I love those types of bands. Like a lot of the more punk bands they kind of do that kind of stuff, and I really enjoy that music. And so I like Rush, even though I disagree with them strongly on some of their positions. I think they have some really interesting ideas and are kind of thinking outside the box. So in one sense, I'm totally on board with a lot of their messaging. If you've listened to seasons 9 and 11 in particular on government and propaganda, then you'll know that that's true. I like to try to think outside the box too. But Rush, they kind of take that individualism to the extreme. The philosophy, which manifests itself most fully, I think, in this song that we're going to explore today, in their song Free Will. So I want to take a look at the song, and I want to break apart the lyrics just a section at a time and try to dissect the meaning that seems to kind of come out of it in my mind, and then importantly tie that into the series that we have going on. To start us off, let's just listen to the lyrics to the first verse of their song. So here they are. Quote, "There are those who think that life has nothing left to chance, a host of holy horrors to direct our aimless dance. A planet of playthings, we dance on the strings of powers we cannot perceive. The stars aren't aligned, or the gods are malign. Blame is better to give than receive." End quote. So the first verse seems pretty straightforward. Rush is singing against those, in large part, who are religious. And they don't necessarily single out any religion, but rather point at religion in general. So a lot of you all think this is a terrible world filled with evil and suffering, and it's the result of some so-called holy being, a being who's powerful and directs the dance of life. He's sovereign, a being who has us all on puppet strings and uses us as playthings because obviously he's not correcting all of this terrible stuff. And you can just blame this being for evil and injustice in the world, like, it's because of him. You can blame your lot in life or your oppression over others, not on your choices, but on the fact that this is God's will. That's not such a great belief system now, is it? And that's essentially what they're saying. Right? They're saying that God seems really culpable. You call him holy, but look how terrible everything is. And when a tragedy happens, oh, well, God must have some plan for this, right? But God, he's not doing anything about it. So Rush thinks that this is terrible, right? And they set up the chorus with this verse. And I want you to listen to their response to this philosophy in their chorus. So they've set up the problem. Now they're going to offer you a solution in the chorus. They sing, quote, "You can choose a ready guide in some celestial voice. If you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. You can choose from phantom fears and kindness that can kill. I will choose a path that's clear. I will choose free will." So you can choose to believe what they sang about in the chorus, right? You can choose some capricious celestial voice to follow, somebody who says that they're holy and lets all this evil happen, right? There are plenty of religions to choose from, right? Plenty of paths to go. So go ahead, take your pick. You can choose a God who's angry and vindictive, and you can allow fear to guide your actions. Or you can choose a passive or even a deity who is so gentle and loving that it's impotent, right? And you can even choose not to decide at all, right? Just ignore reality, which is itself a choice. But as for Rush, they're going to choose the path that's clear. They're going to choose free will. In the second verse, Rush is going to essentially make the same argument as the first one, as their first verse. They're going to point out how belief in a deity entails determinism and the dissolution of culpability. And even though the ideas are the same, I want to read the lyrics just so you can hear them and kind of reinforce this idea that they're arguing against, this thing that they set up as being that what represents religion and the alternative to what they're singing. So the second verse says, quote, "There are those who think that they were dealt a losing hand. The cards were stacked against them. They were born in Lotus land. All preordained, a prisoner in chains, a victim of venomous fate. Kicked in the face, you can pray for a place in heaven's unearthly estate." End quote. Okay, so like I said, essentially the same thing as the first verse. They're kind of just railing against religion and this idea of some kind of deity out there. So at this point, there are really just two more lines in the song beside the chorus. And this is the kicker for me, and I saved these to the end for this reason. All along, Rush has been condescendingly critiquing those ignorant people who cling to religion. Religion makes people avoid blame and responsibility. It makes them ineffectual in the world. It leads to depressing views like fate. And in these last two lines, however, Rush is going to tell us what they really think. Like, sure, they've already told us that they believe in free will, but like what does that even mean? Right? That's a lot of people who say that they believe in free will. They never really understand, well, what does that mean? They can't make a positive assertion of what that is, like what that is based on. So here, Rush is going to try. They're going to attempt. They're going to be like, oh, I believe in free will. And what does free will mean? Right? What's the basis for free will? Just like the Adjustment Bureau, right? For those who believe in free will. Okay? Show me this free will. Oh, it's just determinism in their nature to love each other. Oh, that's what you mean by free will? Okay. All right, Rush. What do you mean by free will? What does this mean? So I think what I'll do is, instead of telling you what their conclusion is, I want to read these last two lines to you, because it's a conclusion that they hinted at in the very first line of their song. So I'm going to read these two lines, then I'm going to pause, then I'm going to read the first line of the song so you can catch the theme. All right? Here it is. Each of us, a cell of awareness, imperfect and incomplete, genetic blends with uncertain ends on a fortune hunt that's far too fleet. Okay, now to the first line of their song. There are those who think that life has nothing left to chance. All right, listen to these ideas. Imperfect and incomplete cell, genetic blends, uncertain ends, a fortune hunt, chance. Okay, think about all these words, these ideas, those jam-packed in those three lines. Think about them really closely. We're an imperfect and incomplete cell, a random genetic blend that determines who we are. We have uncertain ends. We have no idea what our purpose is, where we're going or what we're here for. We're on a fortune hunt, but what fortune and who determines what fortunes are, like what's worth anything, what has value, right? For what? To just lose in the end, to just get rid of, like, all right, there's a lot of ambiguity there. And in all of this, those stupid religious people, they think that there's nothing left to chance, right? Those people who think that God is sovereign, that everything's ordained, right? Those stupid religious people don't think that there's anything left to chance. So I would summarize Rush's argument like this. Religious people are stupid because they think that everything was set in motion and governed by a deity, meaning this life is going along as the deity either intended it to or allows it to, towards the end of whatever that said deity determined, right? What is the purpose of humanity? What is the purpose of life? What is the telos of it all? But Rush, right? I don't like that. I don't want to choose a path that someone else tells me to be on. I want to choose the path that I choose. And who am I to choose? I'm a random mix of DNA, right? There's no God. I'm a random mix of DNA. Could have been any other way, any other combination, and it ended up being me. I'm an imperfect mix, right? Got problems in my genetic code, in my experiences. I've made bad decisions. And I've got physical problems, right? Mental problems, whatever. I'm an imperfect mix. I have no purpose. I have no goal for which I was created, because I wasn't created, and I was really formed by chance. And essentially everything I am is based on chance. Who I am, the desires I have, and where I end up. So in all of that, I'm going to choose the path that's clear. I'm just going to choose by chance. Now, if you listened to my season on simplicity and caught the episode on self-purposing, then you'll understand even more the multitude of problems present with Rush's alternative here. For those who haven't heard it, I'll try to link it in the show notes, but it's episode 411, season 15, episode 33, if you're interested. Anyway, Rush can't stand the idea of being determined by anything, guided by, held back by, prodded on towards some preset goal by anything, any deity, anything except the roll of the dice, chance, right? There are those fools who think that there's nothing left to chance. That's what they say themselves. and imply throughout the song. Their choices, free will, is based on chance. And choice has to be based on something, right? And that was the crux of the last 2 episodes. Stories, whether Hollywood fiction or biographical reality, don't make any sense apart from nature's causation, explanation. The alternative is what we see here with Rush, random chance. And as we explored in the first episode with the time travel thought experiment, blame and praise make no sense when our choices are random, which is what they would be in a world where libertarian free will was true. Interestingly, many of these same problems leveled at determinism hit just as hard on systems of randomness, like that of libertarian free will. There's no legitimate place for blame or praise in randomness. Just look at what Rush says here. They're railing against the stupidity of religion, and they're strongly implying, if not outright declaring, that those who cling to religion are ignorant fools. In verse 2, they said, quote, "There are those who think that they were dealt a losing hand. The cards were stacked against them. They weren't born in Lotus Land." End quote. So Rush is saying that these fools blame their misfortune on God stacking the cards against them in their ill-timed or ill-located births. Had they just been born in another family or in another land, then things would be better. But what did Rush say in their song? We're genetic blends with uncertain ends, and yes, everything is left up to chance. The only reason the members of Rush don't believe what they do in Lotus Land, and the only reason the members of Rush aren't ignorant fools who think that they were dealt a losing hand by a capricious deity, is because of chance. Chance placed them in the family it did, in the time it did, with the genetics that it did, and with the experiences that they had. Rush has been enlightened, but it wasn't by their choice, it was by chance. And chance, as I hope you can now see, is just another name for determinism. Rush couldn't have believed any other way because chance imposed all of the circumstances upon them. The only difference is that chance is an unintentioned omnipotent force. It's not some capricious deity who determines things. It's the impersonal roll of the dice that determines them. Now, hopefully this exploration helped you to get just another angle, another glimpse. There's a bit of overlap with our 2 previous episodes, but hopefully it just gives you another glimpse at the free will problem. Nobody can explain what free will is, and anybody who tries fails miserably. Whether it's Rush trying to think that they're so much better than everybody else because they choose free will, or whether it's Hollywood trying to make a love story that makes sense using free will when they end up using determinism. Whatever it is, right? Nobody can tell you what free will is, and anytime they try, it ends up being just either miserably hopeless or counterfeiting, determinism or some other aspects of causality, like the Adjustment Bureau did. So hopefully this other angle adds to the case, and we're going to be coming back with a number of other episodes to bolster it even more.
That's all for now. So peace, and because I'm a pacifist, when I say it, I mean it. This podcast is a part of the Kingdom Outpost Network. Please check out the links below to find other great podcasts and content related to nonviolence and kingdom living.